Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan. Yes, we're back, but unfortunately, the Eagles will not be back in the playoffs for the fourth straight year. They were eliminated 37-17, a pretty ugly game against the Dallas Cowboys. Adam and I will have a lot of observations. I actually think this is kind of a fitting way for the season to end, Adam. I mean, there was that glimmer of hope with Jalen Hurts starting, but in the end, as we always take the aerial view, in 3 games, Jalen Hurts played satisfactory football. Sometimes he was really good, sometimes okay. I never thought he was awful, right?
Yeah.
But the Eagles still went 1-2 in his starts, which to me illustrates what we've been talking about, is that it's not just the quarterback. This team had a lot of other issues. They had terrible injuries, obviously, but the quarterback change helped, but it wasn't good. They were not a good team.
Right. It doesn't cure all ills, correct.
Right.
Just looking at it, they had such a wonderful opportunity on Sunday. Watching as I thought would happen would lose. I thought they'd get handled pretty well. They did, but they made it interesting late. They shouldn't have. Carolina had them. They got dominated. The game kind of went well like I thought. So it's set up because the Eagles were playing a little bit later. All they have to do is close the deal. And here we go. We'll play Week 17 in Philly against Washington, a team that's hurting. And it looked good, man. It looked good to start this game. And I thought you summed it up pretty well. Everything that's plagued this football team this season, penalties, it was an absolute embarrassment.
So glad you brought that up, because I don't think we've talked about – you and I have talked about it a little bit more over the last week or two about penalties really being problematic, because it seems like a lot of them are occurring on third down, like the false starts that put you way behind the chains. I mean, you expected a few DPIs, right, again, with this secondary against those receivers. Those don't hurt. I don't think those are as crippling as the offensive penalties. Those really hurt the Eagles over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't look it up yet. But after the 11 or 12 they had against Dallas for over 100 yards, if they were not among the top 5 most penalized teams in the last 6 or 7 games, last half of the season.
So my aerial view would be everything that's plagued them, and I would agree with you that this season, now you add the penalties to it, it was a symptomatic of the season. Guys who shouldn't be playing are playing. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but I was laughing when I was like, what is 36? Wait, is J.J. out there? No, it's Rudy Ford. I mean, what is he doing out there in the first quarter? I'm like, this is not good. He's only a special teams player. He's a 5th safety. If you have nobody else, he's a really good special teams player. He's the fastest special teams player they have.
Right.
Couldn't be out there. Graylin Arnold, who had a minor injury for several weeks, he was out there because he could play a little corner. He could play safety. It was an absolute nightmare. It was bad. I mean, some of the guys, like I go, 66. Who the heck is 66? Oh, Piersbacher. Okay, he played Piersbacher. Yeah, he played. Like, what is this guy doing out there? A lot of injuries in the game. Fletcher Cox couldn't play most of the game because of the stinger injury. It's just such a bizarre game in that they get off to this 14-3 lead.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, here we go. We talked about it in our pregame. They're going to go to deep to DeSean. They did. I mean, I didn't chart the snaps, but I'm like, where the hell was he for 3.5 quarters?
I kept thinking, and I hope this isn't the case. I really hope that they didn't just give DeSean Jackson an opportunity to audition himself for some other team while they're out there trying to scrap and claw and make, and win a game to stay alive. Because if that's what they did, I mean, I've already kind of beat them up over capitulating to veterans this year, be it Jason Peters or Alshon Jeffrey. But if that's the case, that they let him just have one good bomb touchdown, remind everybody who DeSean Jackson is, and then put him on the shelf so that when they cut him this year, he can go somewhere else and dominate. That's just shameful. I hope that's really not the reason.
I don't know. Yeah, that's not something I could see them ever doing. But when you say that, it's like, okay, well, then there's got to be a reason. It was ridiculous.
I agree.
I mean, I didn't think he'd play a lot. I figured he played 15 to 20 snaps. I thought that's kind of what we were looking at here because he hasn't played in over 2 months. This was not a shoulder injury, so you could do everything in rehab. This is a broken ankle where he didn't have surgery, but there's only so much he can do. He only practiced for 3 days, so they were pushing this forward. And for them to get up 14-3, and I understand they had a bunch of guys who shouldn't be playing on defense, but you got to keep scoring. And then they come out and run the ball in the second half, the first 2 plays. I'm like, what are you doing? What?
I don't know.
I just know by analytics, you absolutely throw the football. You just keep throwing. Dallas, I give Mike McCarthy and Kellen more credit. They knew by personnel the matchups favor them big time at their receivers versus Jacquet. Now we finally got the name right. It is Jacquet.
Mm-hmm.
Going after him, Eagles only dressed 3 true corners. We made that note in the pregame. Boy, that stick out like a sore thumb. Oh my God, it's like we were like inviting him. Hey, here's what you do to beat the Eagles: throw at 38.
Yeah,
he's only played corner 3 years in his life. This is his 3rd season as a quarterback. Right. Oh my God, I give them credit. They knew what was coming. They got it, and they hammered it.
Yeah, that was, by the way, the number one reason that I picked Dallas to win, and it came to fruition.
Did you? I forgot. Good call.
That's right. I was the only one. I gained a game on all of you. So we got a nice little contest going down to the stretch next week.
Oh, jeez.
Winner take all. Winner take no credit.
Week 17 against Washington.
Yeah.
By the way, what's going to happen is typically, but not always, but typically, teams that go into what's called evaluation mode, they start playing a bunch of younger players. Now, you would say, well, aren't they playing a lot of younger players? Yes. But Pierce Bacher kid, he might play. Brett Toth, who had to come in for, I thought he came in for Mailata when Mailata had the head injury. It's just an opportunity. T.Y. McGill, just to see. Quez Watkins, maybe he plays more snaps. It was just an opportunity to do that. But, overall, they were so undermanned. That's why I was so surprised that they got off to the lead early.
Yeah.
As easily as they did. I mean, it's like they obviously did a good job of advance scouting. They knew exactly what they were going to get.
Sure.
Good. I mean, really good game plan. They scripted it pretty well. But
Yep.
then after that, man, I know people were saying Hurts didn't play well. I would say he was uneven.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Uneven. It wasn't great. He didn't lose the game for them. They clearly lost because of their defense and being behind the 8 ball. But
one bad pick. One terrible pick.
Yes. One terrible pick. Right. A couple of times lost handle of the ball. He'll have to work on that. I do have one bone I'm going to pick with him when we go through the offensive breakdown, because I think this helped lead. Look, Dallas was going to win based on how they played because they just could do what they wanted offensively. But there is one point in the game that I thought became the turning point, and we'll go through that when we hit the offensive summation here. So big picture number 2, Adam, Jeffrey Lurie. Got to have a lot to think about here. I mean, it's, like I said, when you do see a quarterback switch, give a team a spark, but you falter in other areas. I have said that the first 2 games, if you were Doug versus Carson, it looks a lot better for Doug. But this kind of game does not look well for Doug because the quarterback, again, he wasn't atrocious. He wasn't great, but you lost this game for a lot more reasons than the quarterback.
Yeah, because whereas with the Cardinals, the quarterback gave you a great chance to win the game. He played exceptional football.
Mm-hmm.
This game, he was one of the reasons why they didn't win, and one of the reasons why they stayed in it early. Again, it's an uneven game. He did some really good things early. Struggled probably after the first quarter. It was a regression in his play, but he kept fighting as they did. They did all they could, but he loses Goddard to the calf injury for most of the second half.
Right.
I don't know where Deshaun Jackson went. That was bizarre to me. We'll see what Doug Pederson says this week.
Fletcher Cox.
Their offensive line was atrocious. They had so many the penalties. I mean, I understand that you're playing guys, like Matt Pryor shouldn't be out there. So many false start penalties. I stopped counting. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't like to get on broadcast crews too much, but I mean, I feel like they drew too much of a correlation between the scoring outburst that the Cowboys went on and when Fletcher Cox exited the game. I mean, one guy is not going to make such a difference that you're going to start hemorrhaging points. I know Fletcher Cox is a good player. I know he's a Pro Bowler. I know what he can do. We all do. But he goes out and you completely implode as a defense. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
that doesn't really happen. So,
I agree.
The broadcasters really try to hit that hard.
Yeah, I enjoy John Vilma, but I disagree with some of his – defensive players want to run the football. They don't understand. They don't understand situational football and game management sometimes.
Yeah,
he's a pretty smart guy. I just don't agree with what he was talking about.
I agree. He was making Talib look like Jim Nantz for a minute there.
You see, I
like Talib. I was all right with him.
Talib got crushed by fans and the media. I'm one of the few that liked. I enjoyed it. Whatever. But getting back to this game, too many penalties, too many mistakes. really undermanned, and it got worse as the game went along. The issues on the offensive line, the 13 changes this season, it caught up to them. And look, it was going to catch up to them sometime. It's just a shame that Week 17 didn't set out. I don't care what the records are. It's an NFC. It could have been for the NFC East, and probably would have been the Sunday night game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it probably would. And you're right. Washington lose. I mean, everything was lined up. Well. Everything was set up well, except for the fact that, as we mentioned many times, the Eagles didn't have any good corners other than Darius Slay, and the Cowboys had a lot of good wide receivers.
Even Slay, Geoff.
Yeah.
You know, people have been hammering on about Slay's not as good as we thought. I don't know that I disagree with that. I mean, I think he's a good player. He's not. I don't think he played very good or great football. He didn't. He hasn't played. He has not played at the level of the contract.
Yep.
I would say he's played like a $10 million a year player, not a $17 million player.
Yeah, he's averaged good. Earlier in the season, he was very good. You know, we were talking about how well he did against McLaurin in the Washington game,
sure.
How well he did against the receivers that the Bengals have. You know, the technicians on the Rams, I don't remember them beating anybody over the top.
They got the tight end. Yeah, Higbee got them.
The tight end did, but not the wide receivers.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody Slay was covering. So I thought he did it. And even in the first game against Dallas, I think he played in that game and did fairly well. But yeah, I do wonder if having to kind of be the only, really the only good player in that secondary by the end of the year was just a little bit too much to ask for him. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to find.
We also had injuries. You know, he definitely was not himself for most of the second half.
Right.
Particularly the last 4 to 5 games, there were some real struggles. You saw what happened against 14 of the Seahawks. Metcalf crushed him.
Metcalf
crushed
killed him. Right.
And
Avante Adams got him a little bit too.
Avante Adams got it's just it happened. It is what it is. They've got a lot of soul searching. Geoff and I are going to turn the page a half this week, not fully, because they do have a game. But we're going to start to look into, and I'm already starting on it, my top 10 challengers for this team in the offseason, what they need to do.
How do you stop at 10?
Well, no, but look, I got 25 to 30 issues with this football team, but there's like a top 10. And we know about the head coach. We know about the quarterback situation. That's obviously the obvious ones. But there are other challenges. For instance, I'll give you one, which I knew it was a mistake at the time, and you and I talked about in the preseason. Avante Maddox is not an outside corner. He's a slot corner. He's a perfect slot corner. 5'9", tough, smart, competitive, and fast. But he's not an outside corner. That was a mistake. So they got to. That's in my top 10 things they got to correct. And they got to get it right. And that's the kind of thing we're going to start looking at. And then obviously once the decision on the head coach is made, that'll give us clues to what's going to happen at quarterback. And we're going to hammer whatever we hammer in early January. Geoff and I, over the last couple of years, reported on coaching changes first, and we'll see. It's going to be fascinating to see, even if Pederson comes back, whether or not the offensive, defensive staffs, assistants will be back. Some of them are. We don't know. When you're as bad as this football team, 4-10-1, really?
Yep.
That's not going to go over well with the owner.
Nope, it is not. Are you already giving them a? Oh yeah, they are 4-10-1 now, right? They could wind up being 4-11-1. So that's hard to imagine.
I know.
Going into the year, you and I both thought the Eagles had taken a slight step back in overall talent, but thought they'd be competitive.
9 wins, I thought was very reasonable.
Man, that's
apparently not.
No, apparently not. Not even twice that.
One, I'll wear that one. Hey, when I'm wrong, I'll take it. I missed on that one. You can't predict injuries and this COVID stuff. But one of the themes of our offseason is, what happened to this roster? Where did they miss? Where did we miss as evaluators? Not only as reporters, but we put our analyst hats on. And where do the fans think they missed? And we'll get into that as January progresses.
Right. All right. Well, make sure you're also reading all the great coverage and content that you'll find at phlsportsnation.com as they cover all of the Philadelphia teams like nobody else. Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Union, everybody. Phillies, of course, so they are for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. Make sure you check them out, phlsportsnation.com, and on Twitter, at phlsportsnation. We'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right, Adam, I want to go through what I thought was the turning point in this game and maybe see if you agree.
Okay.
The Eagles were leading at the time. They were up, I'll tell you right now, I think they were up 14-13, okay? They're driving into Dallas territory. It's third down, and we've seen this happen now in all three of Jalen Hurts' starts. Jalen Reagor stacked his corner on a deep post and had a step on the coverage in the end zone.
Touchdown.
And the ball was not well placed. Was not a good timing throw. All right, it happens. It's one play, but I call it the turning point because they had to settle for a field goal instead of getting what should have been a touchdown. They go up 17-13. And then, of course, the defensive implosion starts to begin from there as Dallas marches down the field and gets the 7-yard touchdown to Michael Gallup to cut it to 3. And then CeeDee Lamb, excuse me, on the touchdown pass puts him, up and everything like that. So, but I really thought that, if the Eagles had punched that one in and extended their lead perhaps to, I guess at that point it would have been 21-3 or 21-10 maybe, then you're starting to look at it a little bit differently because now Dallas is got to be very one-dimensional.
Yeah,
and as a defense, you can play it differently a little bit more. But Jim started coming after him and giving up those outs.
Sure, look, there's a big difference between 17-3 and 17-13 and 20-13.
Yeah,
right up that seam, right up the middle. You got to hit that when he wins it. But look, that's just a microcosm of this game. They missed opportunities. Man, these penalties, the rally killers, when they're moving the football, Hurts is moving the football, and then somehow there's a hold. And by the way, his fumble was absolutely not a fumble. I don't know what the hell the rest were. Even Dean Blandino said it.
It's like every time they play the Cowboys, there's got to be some kind of fumble that the Cowboys
or a phantom call 2 years with Goddard for the 75-yard touchdown catch.
Or that, that's right. Every time they play the Cowboys, something strange happens there.
Bad call. Anyway.
Yeah. But again, you got to emphasize with Jalen Hurts holding on to the ball when you're running. If you're going to be a runner like that, you got to grip it.
Right, 3 fumbles the week before. He didn't lose them, but that's something you'll have to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I know they only had 17 points, which is just ridiculous against a bad defense like Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they moved the football in the first quarter, it was one of these situations. I don't know how you felt, but I'm like, it can't be this easy. This is ridiculous. This is just absurd. I mean, they've got them. You know what it felt like in a way? It's funny how life comes at you. Week 1 against Washington when they went up 14-0. I'm like, wow, they're really moving the football.
Boy, it did feel like that, yeah.
And then they wound up they wound up not scoring another point or whatever. With 17, I know they gave up. What was it? Was that game 17-14? I don't remember what the hell happened, but I know they went down 17-14 that Washington game.
Yeah, and then it kind of became an onslaught. You're right in both situations. Yeah. So and again, I know someone's going to say we're not
27-17. Yeah.
Right. Someone's going to say we're not being fair. They're going to say Jalen Hurts completed 53% of his passes, 54 if you round up, and took 3 sacks and was picked off twice and had a passer rating of 70.7. And if Carson Wentz did that, we'd be shredding him and killing him, but now we're making excuses for Jalen Hurts. I know some people are going to say that. If you can't tell the difference between a 5-year veteran who's as accomplished as Carson was and a guy making his 3rd career NFL start who was picked in the 2nd round, then I don't know what to do for you. I mean, it's just not an apples-to-apples situation.
I remember what Greg Cosell told me earlier this season when Justin Herbert was lighting it up. He goes, he's going to have a rookie game. He's going to look like a rookie at some point. People need not to jump on him. And that game, and he was awful against the Patriots at home. They got shut out at home. It was like 48-0, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. And this was not a bad game. It's just uneven. He had some throws he'd like to have back. He held on the ball too long sometimes. Sometimes he was looking for someone to get open. They weren't getting open. We'll learn more as we get information from the All-22. But it's never going to be perfect. The good thing with Hurts' issues are all correctable. Mm-hmm. And you that's what Monday morning is for. And you look forward to the Washington game because Washington could play defense. That'll be a much better challenge for him because Washington's front's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they don't give you a lot. So
they got a lot to play for.
And they do. Right. Exactly. So that'll be interesting. But, overall in offense before we move to defense, unfortunately, because Goddard got hurt in the second half when they were trying to come back, that crushed them. That really hurt them. It was good to see Quez Watkins make the big play for 43 yards. Fulgham got out there.
Yep.
Jeffrey drew a penalty, which was kind of funny. Jordan Lewis mugged him. And there just were not after the Jackson play though. If there were like very few big plays, and I was surprised by that because Dallas' secondary, they're not athletic. They're Dallas corner. Diggs is the only guy who really could run a corner. They don't have very fast corners.
Right.
I just was surprised that they did not. It seemed like they had them scouted out. When they were up 14-3, I'm like, okay, they did come out running and throwing, but they attacked their secondary. When they threw it, they were going after it.
Right.
And after the first quarter, I'm like, man, what happened here? Do you think it's just the penalties? What do you think happened here?
Oh, I definitely think when you have 12 penalties, they're all I mean, look, they had an opportunity after the Darius Slay interception, down 10, was it 27-17, I think, to turn that into points, make it maybe 27-20, maybe even 27-24, and they had 3 penalties on that drive alone.
How's that happen?
Including 2 false starts by
Hold
Matt
your water,
Barnes.
man.
I mean, my God, it's like, are you trying not to win? I mean, it's not like it's a full stadium. I mean, there were a lot of people in there. I guess COVID doesn't exist in Texas.
Yeah, well, they've allowed they've the rule. Yeah, the laws in Texas are different, and they've had fans in there for majority of the season. It's interesting in that there were a couple plays. Boy, did they get the one play they give Hurts, I don't know, 7 seconds to throw the football in the first half.
Yep.
It's incredible. I was like, wow, this is a little bit better than I expected. I mean, they came out throwing and they were aggressive. I'm just so surprised. And yes, penalties are a big part of it. But then there's a reason why the Eagles are a 4-win team. Yeah. They have trouble sustaining success in game.
So I want to ask you about one thing. Well, first of all, I want to make a point on the offensive line, which I think Jordan Mailata, on the first touchdown by Miles Sanders after the one by Hurts called back, he destroyed whoever it was who was blocking. So he continues to show in run blocking that he's learning to assert himself. We talked about that on the pregame show. Trey Thomas, by the way, did an excellent job of actually breaking down how some of his great blocks look like great blocks, but clog up a cutback lane. So that's something he'll have to work on. But in general, I thought his run blocking was good, but you saw Randy Gregory edge him a couple of times, and I think he gave up a sack. So this is clearly he's going to have to work in the offseason on his pass pro. I think that's behind his run blocking.
Yes. Do you know who started a D tackle for the Cowboys? He played for the Eagles.
I should know.
He's a real scrub.
I must have forgotten. It wasn't
Justin Hamilton.
Oh yeah, Justin Hamilton. I remember when he was. He was from Canada too. Wasn't he in the Canadian?
I don't know. I know he was with. You might be right. He was with Seattle a little bit.
Right.
And I thought it might happen because they were so thin at D tackle. They were down 4 guys this season. Right. So it was like he's the last man standing. That's obviously that's part of why they had success, but it's just this game's a microcosm of their problems. They can never sustain any success. Has there been the game where you go, okay, from beginning to end, they played well? I'm just trying to remember. Was there a game where they
only have 4 wins, so no. The answer is no. Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because it's just this is
New Orleans. I guess New Orleans would be really.
That was a good one. Yeah,
well.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's probably because their defense is unbelievable. Their defensive front. But look, folks, it's going to be a painful offseason for your Eagles in that they're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions. Some of your favorite players probably won't be the football team.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but some. This is not usually what they do. They tend to hang on to the players too long sometimes. But you know what? My mantra is what Geoff's was last spring. It shouldn't take for them to have such a bad cap problem that they have to get younger, but they must get younger and significantly younger. The owner should not put pressure on their front office or whoever's coaching them, whether it's Pederson or somebody else. Mm-hmm. Get younger, draft and develop. Use these draft picks. They have really good personnel people that work for Roseman, Andy White on his group, Anthony Patch, and the guys have been with the team for a long time. These guys are really good evaluators. And Roseman's got to follow the plan and rebuild this thing while you try to win. Look, Seattle did it when everyone thought they couldn't win. Sure, they had Russell Wilson, but you got to draft better. And that to me is the thing that's key going forward here.
No doubt about it. One last kind of scenario I want to ask you about before we move on to the defense.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, the Eagles are down 30-17, which means it's a 2-possession game, 13 points. And they're at the Dallas 33, and it's 4th and 15. And Doug keeps his offense on the field. They go for it. It's a short pass to Zach Ertz, the turnover on downs. I know Jake Elliott has struggled this year, but you are indoors. You have a chance to make it, I guess at that point it could have made it cut it to
Vilma
10.
pointed that out. John was right. He absolutely was right.
I wouldn't have even killed them maybe for punting and trying to pin him inside.
Yeah, sure.
But I thought of all the three options, that was actually the most risky to go for it there, because 4th and 15 is very, very difficult.
I don't know what I think what happened was he was chasing points. I think he started feeling the pressure because he knew the season was on the line.
Yeah.
Coaches do this. One of the biggest surprises from a positive with Pederson since he became the Eagles head coach is how good he is, relatively good with time management. A lot of people thought he'd be bad because Andy Reid had struggled, as we know, in Philly. Mm-hmm. And he rarely wastes time out. He rarely doesn't make the right decision by analytics because he uses that. He rarely goes by gut feel. He just goes, this is what the percentages tell me. And more often than not, he's right. He gaffed there, and it just was not a good game for him overall, and wasn't a great game for the coaches, but they were so under – they just had very little to work with. They learned – this is also, by the way, this is a learning game. Michael Jacquet, if they're healthy at corner, he can't be out there as a start. He can't start. He's got a long way to go. The kid, I like that that Jim Schwartz has said it, and the broadcast team said it. He's a pretty confident kid. Well, he got his welcome to the NFL moment in this game against Dallas. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, he did. I want to ask you about something in particular with the cornerbacks, but first we're going to pause to talk about our friends from DraftKings. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses. That's code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So I saw it online while it was happening, and I couldn't decide if I thought it was a fair criticism or not. I suppose it is. But Jacquet gave up 184? I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of yards.
Well, here, just one thing, though. We do not know. I don't care who's putting it out there. We do not know. Some of it we know because our eyes show us he was on Gallup. But when you assign, this is where teams have a problem with, and I don't know who put – I didn't see what you're talking about. Just to put one point out there, what teams have a problem with as much as they love Pro Football Focus and Sports Info Solutions, all the analytic companies,
sure,
they get some stuff wrong when they're assigning blame to corners and whoever was in coverage.
Absolutely.
I know they have coaches working now. PFF's done a good job. Chris Collinsworth, who owns it, he's put some money into his company and hiring ex-coaches and ex-players, which is great. But you're not always going to get it right when you assign blame to a player. But I would say our eyes are pretty good on this one. Michael Gallup got housed.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacquet just gave up a ton of yards to Gallup and some other wide receivers. So I'll ask you this. Should Jim – he did it early in the fourth quarter. Was it too late when he moved Jalen Mills over to cornerback?
No, because the game doesn't mean anything next week. I'll tell you what. If they would have won, I absolutely would have put Mills at corner. I know he doesn't run very well. He's smart. He'll use his hands. He knows he's just a technique guy. He always got by with technique because he didn't run very well. But it was a nightmare. I mean, I felt bad for the kid because sometimes he's around the ball, but he doesn't locate very well because he's new to the position. That's just because he just didn't have enough reps there in his football playing career because he's a former quarterback and wide receiver. Yeah. So it is what it is. At this point, they kind of know where he's at. This game against Dallas, they have enough tape on him now. They know he's a project. Not that they didn't know that he was undrafted, but he is so far away from being ready to be a starter. That's what they've learned.
Absolutely. I was thinking that it's fair criticism, but I was also thinking that it was just a year ago at this time that Jalen Mills was on the other end of a lot of those bad touchdowns that the Eagles gave up.
So was Ronald Darby.
Maybe it would have been a little bit of a tourniquet, but I don't, as I said in the pregame show, Adam, the biggest fear that I had from a matchup standpoint outside of that one was CeeDee Lamb against Nickel Roby-Coleman. And certainly later in the game, they dialed up Roby-Coleman's number 2 to go attack. So I'm not sure that if you had moved Mills to corner, then you're left with Kayvon Wallace and Rudy Ford and Marcus Epps at safety. And, this goes back to last year when Epps had to cover DK Metcalf in the slot in that playoff game against Seattle and blew that too. So I'm just not sure there was a really good strategy that was going to.
No, there's really nothing he can do. Schwartz did all that he could against Arizona. They hung in there. They made the game close. This game, once the dam broke, it never stopped. I mean, Gallup and Cooper combined for 242 yards on 10 receptions. several big plays. This is their worst game, obviously, giving up big plays. It was one big play after another. It was really hard to understand. It was the Lamb play. CeeDee Lamb looked like he did in college, running after the catch, being physical. Cooper got him, as he usually does. Although last year he disappeared in Philly, but this game he sure as heck didn't. And Gallup is, we said in our pregame show, he's the best deep threat by far. Good football player. They got a little bit to Andy Dalton early, but then once he started getting a rhythm, forget it.
Right. Now, I jokingly made fun of the fact that the Cowboys were going to play Ezekiel Elliott over Tony Pollard, who had been red hot lately. And joke was on me as Ezekiel Elliott went back to being an Eagles nemesis with 19 carries for 105 yards.
You got him. Yep.
Yeah, 34 yards receiving. So there's really nothing positive to talk about with the defense. They got a few hits on Andy Dalton. Jim blitzed a lot more, which surprised me. I guess he felt that he needed to give his corners more protection by just forcing the issue. But, in that case, you win some, you lose some, and then they wound up losing a lot.
Yeah, there's very little they can do. He tried. The one thing before we get out of here is that I was very disappointed, and I understand Cox didn't play. I was hopeful that Hargrave would continue on that streak. He's been playing such great football. You notice you didn't hear his name very much. They got some pressure, but not a lot. I mean, they did they hit Dalton sometimes because Dalton has a tendency to hold on to the football.
Right.
This has been his problem over his career. When he's not doing well, he doesn't see the field well, and he holds on to it.
Yeah.
And Curry got some hits in there. Jordan Avery went up playing, which I thought he would. And funny, I don't know if you noticed that they played the kid, the undrafted kid. He didn't want to have what's the guy's name from
Osman?
Yeah.
Oh,
Joe Osman played it standing up. He did some standing up. Yeah. But it was a bad performance for the defense. And the Fletcher Cox injury obviously was impactful. But as you said, and I totally agree, it's not that it's far down the list of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, it did not tear this defense apart at the seams. I think that was going to happen the way things were going anyway. All right, listen up, fellas. 2020 sucked. It sucked for humanity. It sucked for the planet. It sucked for the Eagles. But it's almost the new year, which means new balls with our sponsor, Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, offering precision-engineered tools for your family jewels and helping 2 million men all over the world get rid of hair on their balls and other places. So if you let yourself go in 2020 while in quarantine, and that's obviously directed toward you, Adam, Manscaped is here for you to reboot and stay clean and shave.
I got my haircut.
And 21. Yeah, I'm just kidding. You had your quarterly haircut.
Yeah, there you go.
I shouldn't talk because I haven't had one in about 4 months.
Yeah, I know people are getting on you about that.
They really are. I'm starting to get a lot of lookalikes that are not flattering. Let's just say that. So maybe I can use Manscaped to give me a fresh start in 2021 because they've got their Perfect Package 3.0. It's got all the right tools for the job. Come out of quarantine with clean balls thanks to the Lawnmower 3.0. The waterproof and skin-safe trimmer will reduce nicks to your two best friends. The third-generation trimmer even has a light to give you the glow-up you need in 2021. And it's also time to freshen up down there this year with the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits, so why wouldn't you put it on the smelliest part of your body? And for that on-the-go freshness, you'll love the Crop Reviver Ball Toner Spray. 2020 was awful, so make sure your boys are refreshed and ready for new beginnings in 2021. Manscaped even threw in their shed travel bag to keep all your goodies stored comfortably. And speaking of comfort, the Manscaped anti-chafing boxer briefs are also included and are hands down the best underwear you will ever wear. A guy with hairy balls is like the year 2020. Don't be that guy. Get 20% off and free shipping using the promo code ITB at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ITB at manscaped.com. 20% off free shipping. Just because the other holidays are over, doesn't mean you shouldn't capitalize on 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code ITB. Happy New Year to your balls. And we do appreciate all the people, by the way, who've reached out to us on Twitter and Facebook and our other social media platforms. So let us know that they got their Manscaped kit in. So good for them. No pictures necessary. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're just happy to know that you've been serviced by Manscaped. That'll do.
Yes.
All right. Who would be your Manscaped man of the game? Because there's actually quite a few guys to choose from.
I know. They're all kind of even. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, you know what? Because he set the tone for the game, I'm going to say Michael Gallup, wide receiver for the Cowboys, because he was the one who crushed him early.
He did.
He's the one who brought him back with the big plays. Obviously, Cooper started, and then Lamb late. But you could flip. You obviously could pick Andy Dalton if you want, but I'm going to take Michael Gallup.
Okay, Michael Gallup. I am going to take Andy Dalton. I mean, 22 of 30. He completed 73% of his passes, 377 yards, a long of 69, a passer rating of 134.7. Now, people like to make fun of Andy Dalton and say that even if he was playing in the first game around, the Eagles still would have won. I don't know if that I truly believe that. I think if he had been starting and not Ben DiNucci, then this season could have been even worse for the Eagles. But credit to Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I'll say this, though. Had Barnett and Sweat played, we're talking a different game here. And obviously, if Cox doesn't get hurt, if you add those three players back in it, we're talking about probably a different result here. But when you're when you're underhanded, when you just don't have your players, and you just can't compete to the level you want to do it at. It was really hard to watch this. Once Dallas got on a roll offensively, I'm like, this is not going to be good because they don't have the horses on defense like they normally would. It's always been about their defensive line rotation. When you're undermanned like this, I don't know what you can do.
Right.
People want to beat up Schwartz. Oh, here we go again with Schwartz. Like, what do you want him to do? He can't invent players. I mean, you have what you have.
No. We'll talk about this more. I like that you brought that up. We'll end it on that. But I got to say, it was not a good year for Jim Schwartz, even when he had players. I mean, if you look at
I'd say
the amount of points that he's given up, and of course, there's lots of decisions to be made this offseason. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. We thank our producer, Hunter Brody. Check him out on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads. His Twitter account is @Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds.